How fast is the coronavirus spreading in the UK? How many people will be infected in the weeks to come? Is enough testing being carried out in the UK? This video uses currently available data concerning the total number of confirmed cases of coronavirus in the UK to develop a mathematical model that predicts how this virus will spread in the near future. And the data I'm using for this video comes from this website here, which is drawing on many sources such as the World Health Organization, Johns Hopkins Centre, and other sources of publications. All right, so the total number of confirmed cases at each date as published by these organisations and checked against various media sources as published in the media confirms we have, I've set out in the table here, date, day number, and total number of confirmed cases, cumulative number of confirmed cases. So 31st of January, there are 2 confirmed cases. The 6th of February, there are 3 confirmed cases. The 10th of February, 7, and so on down until we're here the 8th of March, day 38, there are 280 cases, and so on down to the most recent date that I have included in this video is the 23rd of March, day 53, 6,650 total number of cases. Now, some of these, of course, have begun to recover, but only a small number. And of course, some have died. So these are the total number of confirmed cases. All right, let's plot this. And when we plot this, day across the bottom since the 31st of January and up the side the cumulative number of coronavirus cases. And so this is the total number of people who have been infected. So by the 23rd of March, we have this number here, which is 6,650. Before we move on, just notice with this plot here, it follows a nice sort of curve around until about here, particularly here, it turns over about day 45. The graph just turns to the right. If we were to follow the original trend, it should go up this way. And so we have to wonder, why is the graph turning over and not as many cases are recorded? If you look at the pattern here, and then it turns to the right, this point should be higher up. If we were to follow the trend back here, further up, then this point here, day 45, should be further up over here, and all of these points should move up and to the left a bit. So we'll investigate that later on. Also notice how the gap between them is getting wider as the total number of people infected grows. And yet there's a little pause here almost. This gap here is not as large as, it's not following the pattern of the previous one. So again, that's a point that needs to be investigated. So we'll do that later in the video. All right, so let's move on. So let's plot what we have, and using a mathematical package, we can, with all these points here, we can fit a curve to them. And here's our curve. And we can use a mathematical package or a statistical package to do that. And so when the curve that I've got here and the blue line here, the blue curve, is given by this mathematical equation here. So that's the number of confirmed cases is this value times this to the power of days minus 1, t, day number across the bottom here. Next bit, so how well does this fit the data? Because this will raise some questions. So okay, if we look early on, the model P here doesn't quite agree with the actual number of cases. This column here is the actual number of recorded cases as published in numerous sources. And so 31st of January, there are 2 cases, and the model's predicting, well, 0. You can't have 0.18 of a person. Same with day 3, you can't have 0.6 of a person, and so on as we go down. These values, they're quite different from each other. They differ significantly, and it suggests the model's not very good, and we'll investigate why that is. Keep going. Day 37, still off quite a bit. Day 38, still off a fair bit. Day 39 as well. Day 30, keep going down. The models offer significantly until we get to about day 44. All right, and then day 45 is not too bad. A bit off from 46. Day 47 is pretty good. Day 48 is pretty good. And 49 is off again a bit. 50 is a bit off, as is day 51. And there are reasons for that, and we'll investigate that later on. Just remember this column here is the actual number of reported cases in the UK. Okay, so how does this model work? So here's our model. What do all these decimal numbers mean? All right, so we've got here, if we look at day 52, which is the 22nd of March, and day 53, which is the 23rd of March. On day 52, we had 5,683 cases. The model predict 5,691.516581. And day 53, they're at 6,650 actual cases, but this model predicted 6,973.189199. Right? So this column here is given to us by substituting in this day value here. This is the T column, and it substituted in here, and then this equation tells us, it predicts how many people should be infected, the total number of people who should be infected. All right, and what you can see from here, what it turns out, the meaning of this decimal here is what we're going to look at now. If I take this decimal here, 1.22519, and I multiply it by the value predicted by the model for day 52, so multiply those two together, and I get the value predicted by the model for day 53. So that's how this works. That's the role of this decimal in here. All right, so that means that 6,973.189199 is 22.519% larger than the value for the day before predicted by the model. So this value is 22.59% larger than this value, and that's 22.59% of this value. So what that means is 22.519% of 5,691.516581 is this decimal here multiplied by the original value, this value here, and that gives us this number. Now if we take this number and add it to the original value, this one here, we'll get this value for the next day. All right, so that's the role of this value in here. Now all of the above means that the rate of growth of this virus in the UK is 22.5% per day, according to this model. But as we've seen, this model doesn't quite fit too well. So we might look at why that is. Right? But what about the apparent underreporting or testing noted earlier? Well, if we have a look here, why is this turning down? Why is this lower than it should be? And up here too, what's happening here? What's going on? And so what we can do is that if we remove the values that we think are suspect, that don't seem to agree with the early underlying trend, when there were fewer people infected, it was easy to test everyone. But what happens when more people become infected? It becomes harder to test everyone, to locate and identify everyone. There could be a lack of test kits to achieve that end, and that's been a problem across the world in a number of places, a lack of test kits. Or could it be that people have been reluctant to come forward? That's what we need to have a look at. And to see that, if we have a look here, I'll just zoom in on the graph a bit from, say, day 30 onwards. If you have a look here, it's much more pronounced. There's this trend, smooth curve following around here, which if left to go its way, you would expect would continue up here somewhere. Instead, the actual numbers turned off to the right there. Now, why would that be? Why would the virus, the rate of infection of the virus appear to slow down? Now, there could be a number of reasons for that. I'm not an immunologist, it's not my area, but one possibility is, as has been noted across the world, a lack of testing kits and a lack of widespread testing, because there simply is a lack of testing kits, and the end result, the lack of testing kits and lack of testing results in fewer number of positive confirmed cases, which would definitely affect the data and cause it to turn over like this and continue on a different, shallower trend. And also here, shouldn't the data, again, from this point here, this point should be further away. And if we followed this trend from here, day 45 around, it should go up this way again. But again, it turns off to the right. Again, it suggests a lack of testing, I mean, it could just be that people are not coming forward and not admitting they've got symptoms or not aware that they need to be tested. There's many people who are asymptomatic but can still spread the virus. So there could be any number of reasons, but one thing would certainly be a lack of testing would certainly cause the graph here to turn over like this. And it is certainly something has to be considered, and it has been noted worldwide a lack of test kits and a lack of testing, and so that governments have often been in the dark about who is really infected with this virus, and that's very hard. So what could we do about it? If this is skewing the model, if this is not giving us the true curve describing the true rate of infection, which should be up here maybe somewhere, if we follow that initial trend, fewer people to test, the available test kits cover that. But if you start running out of test kits, then you're going to have problems testing everyone, and you're not going to find how many people are truly positive. And so that would definitely be one source of explaining why the curve turns over. I mean, another possibility is people don't want to come forward. That's a bit unlikely. If you're not feeling too well, you would want to know, and you would want to be tested, and you would want to get treatment. So why would you hide your symptoms or hide the fact that you might be? It doesn't make sense. I mean, and why didn't these people earlier on hide the fact that they were, or not come forward and be tested? So it's a more likely lack of testing, lack of resources to really identify who is carrying the virus is more likely than, say, a reluctance on the part of people to come forward. Given there's no punishment for testing positive to coronavirus, no one in British society, no one in the UK is going to be put in jail for it or punished for it or put before the courts. So why would you not come forward? My suspicion is here this is to do with lack of testing, perhaps due to lack of resources, perhaps the definition of who should be tested is not wide enough, but also I think again it shows up here as well. Okay, what can we do about it in terms of modelling? All right, well, why don't we remove those points from earlier, from day 45 on, remove them. So they were the points up here. Remove them, and then go back and use the mathematical package, which is what I did, and fit a new curve to it. And here's the new fitted curve, which I've extended beyond. Okay, so and here's the new mathematical model. So notice here, this decimal is different, as is this one, and the rate of growth day on day of this one is 29.478%, so a little bit higher than what we had before, which I think was 22 point something. So a bit higher. So here's the rate, 29.47% infection day on day. All right, let's have a look. Let's see, how do the two graphs compare? Well, here's the old data here. All right, remember from day 45, which was here, I removed that data and created the new model based on these points up to here, not including this one. And the new model I then extrapolated beyond, and we have this curve here, which is the one you saw on the previous slide. As you can see, it rises more steeply than does this one. And this, I suspect, is the true rate of infection, or is closer to the true rate of infection than has been officially reported. Next bit, so let's compare the two models now. Here we go. Early on, not too good, but the thing about exponential growth, you'll see that later on it's going to get larger very much quickly, just as the confirmed cases, which is this column here, number of cases. These are the actual reported confirmed cases, and you can see that we're getting, this one is, if we go to day 37, for instance, there's 209 confirmed cases. The first model predicted 270, whereas this one model predicts 177, which is closer to that value. And then we come down here, for instance, day 39, 321 confirmed cases, and this model here is closer to that value than the original model. All right, so let's just keep going. This model here. Now, day 40, 384 confirmed cases. The original model predicted 497, which is way out, but the new model is much closer to what's recorded. Okay, and then if we keep going down, day 45, this is what was actually confirmed. The old model predicted that. This one is maybe even slightly closer than this one. Again, the second model seems to be a little bit better. But then when we get down to the 23rd, there are to the 23rd of March, there are 6,650 recorded cases, actual confirmed cases, and yet the second model is predicting a vastly larger number. And I think what's happening there, what that indicates is that the actual number of people who are actually carrying the virus is larger than the tested confirmed values here. And that's because not enough people, and that would happen if not enough people are being tested. If not enough people are being tested, then your confirmed number of cases will be lower than the actual number within the population. And that's my suspicion here, and why prompted me to make the video here. The actual numbers in our population in the UK may actually be higher, considerably higher, than the actual reported confirmed cases. If we keep going on here beyond, so that's the 23rd of March, the most recent date I have data for, and for the making of this video. If we carry on, the 24th of March should have 14,333, 25th of March, 18,558, 26th of March, 24,029, and so on. We carry on down to the 1st of April, we have 113,217 with this model, and you can see how rapidly it's growing. Now this model, predicts the UK will have 24,029 confirmed cases by the 26th of March. Why does that matter? Well, in the UK, there are a total of 4,224 ICU beds. That means beds with a ventilator attached, because in the serious cases, people need help breathing. Those who go into ICU, and they may be in there for days or weeks. All right, now that value, 4,224, I've been able to glean from this source here and from some others, but certainly that source there, I picked it up. All right, now, about 20% of those infected are roughly, just with this value here, that's about 6.6 ICU beds per 100,000 of the population. That's what the UK is doing. And just as a matter of interest, in Italy, it's about 13 point something ICU beds per 100,000 of the population. So they've got just about double the number of ICU beds that the UK has. So just be aware of that. That puts things in perspective. Now, about 20% of those infected with this virus require hospital treatment, with some or all requiring an ICU bed. That's some or all of that 20% of people get it. The other 80% can get mild to no symptoms to just an unpleasant flu-like situation, but 20% experience serious symptoms and need hospitalisation, and some or many of those require an ICU. Now, 20% of 24,029 is 4,805 people. Now, that figure of 24,029 is according to the second model reached on the 26th of March. But 20% of that number is 4,805, which is already above the total number of ICU beds available. So we're in trouble already by the 26th of March. That's a number greater than total number of ICU beds, as I pointed out. Now, let's say maybe not all of that 20% need an ICU bed. So why don't we just say only 10% of those infected require an ICU bed? Then we reach our limit of ICU beds when 42,240 people are infected, because 10% of that is this number here, 4,224. Now, and that occurs just before the 29th of March, according to this model, if you go back through the numbers. So somewhere between the 28th and 29th of March, this virus is growing so quickly, according to this second model here, that you've already overwhelmed the ICU capacity of the entire country. And that's only assuming that only 10% of those infected require an ICU bed. So clearly, we are running out of time to act. Very clearly, we are running out of time to act. This is not a virus to mess with. All right, so in summary, the virus is highly contagious, as we've seen across the world, and we really require urgent and vigorous social distancing measures to be pursued immediately. That means close schools, universities, provide online learning for those students, but stop the mass gathering that goes on in those institutions. Much more testing is required to determine exactly who is infected, as many show no symptoms but can still transmit the virus. So much more widespread testing is required. And then rigorous contact tracing must occur quickly to find those who've been mixing with infected people in order to slow this virus down. If we don't do that, then the death rate is going to be very high. It will overwhelm the hospital system, as we're seeing in Italy and in China, as we saw not so long ago. We don't want that in the UK. We need to stop that.